The wooden doors of Grace Haven Church side opened as Elijah Ward stepped inside, letting a faint beam of morning light spill across the empty pews. He carried nothing but a worn leather Bible tucked under his arm. The sanctuary smelled of coffee, dust, and old hymns, familiar, comforting. But before he reached the front row, heavy footsteps echoed behind him. A uniformed officer entered through the same door, boots striking the floor like a warning. Officer Cole Renings scanned Elijah from head to toe, expression tightening, hand resting near his duty belt. "You don't belong here," Renings said flatly. Elijah froze. "Sir, I said." The officer repeated louder, "You don't belong in this church." The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, harsh and cold. Elijah's fingers tightened around his Bible as he lifted it slightly, breath trembling. "I'm here for the service." Renings stepped closer, towering. "Not today, you're not. Let's go. Out." The officer's voice wasn't angry. It was dismissive, as if Elijah were an inconvenience, not a human being. Elijah felt every word slice through him, sharp, familiar, exhausting. A woman in the hallway peeked in, then quickly vanished, unwilling to intervene. Elijah swallowed. "This is a house of God," he whispered. Renning smirked. "And I'm telling you, leave." The officer's hand closed around Elijah's arm. The sanctuary lights flickered. Elijah's Bible slipped from his grip and thudded against the floor, right as a familiar voice shouted his name from the far side of the church. And everything stopped. Elijah Ward had always loved the quiet of a sanctuary before service. The smell of old hymnals, the faint hum of the heating vents, the gentle echo of his footsteps, these were the sounds that steadied him. He entered Grace Haven with a soft exhale, clutching his worn Bible the way his mother once held his hand crossing busy streets. He thought he was early enough to settle in unnoticed. He wasn't. Boots struck the wooden floor behind him, firm, loud, intentional. "Hey!" a voice barked. "You can stop right there." Elijah turned slowly. Officer Cole Renings approached as if responding to a break-in. The man's jaw was fixed, his posture rigid, the kind trained into someone who believed they were always right. "Yes, sir?" Elijah kept his voice level. Renings looked him up and down. "Church doesn't open its doors to everybody wandering in." "I'm not wondering. I'm here for morning service." "That's so?" Renings stepped closer. "Got business here." Elijah tapped the Bible gently with one fingertip. "Yes, I do." Renings scoffed. "You can take that outside." A few heads peeked from the hallway. Ushers, choir members, but they ducked away instantly. No one approached. No one questioned the officer's presence. Elijah shifted his weight. "Officer, is there a problem?" "Problem is you're in the wrong place," Renings replied. "And I'm not going to ask again. Let's go." Elijah inhaled deeply, steadying himself. He had dealt with this tone before, on sidewalks, in parking lots, at gas stations, but never inside a church. Not here. Not in the home where he planned to give his first message in just a few weeks. "Sir," Elijah said quietly, "I grew up in this church." "You grew up somewhere else today," Renings muttered. "Move." Elijah lifted his chin, trying to keep the peace. "If you'll allow me to explain." Renings grabbed his arm. The pressure wasn't violent, but it was firm, dismissive, humiliating. Elijah stiffened instinctively, breath catching. He glanced at the side hallway again. A few congregants watched, but quickly pretended they weren't. Their silence burned worse than the officer's grip. "Let's go," Renings repeated. Elijah allowed himself to be escorted toward the exit, refusing to risk escalation. "Officer, you're making a mistake." "Funny," Renings said, tightening his hold. "That's exactly what people say when they are somewhere they shouldn't be." The door swung open, letting in a burst of chilly morning air. Elijah blinked against the brightness. A gust ruffled the pages of his Bible, still tucked beneath his arm. "Officer Renings," a voice shouted sharply. Both men turned. Deacon Harris hurried down the steps, breathless, face pale. "What on earth are you doing?" Harris demanded. "Removing a trespasser," Renings said confidently. Harris froze, eyes wide. "Pastor Ward is not a trespasser." The words hit Elijah first, then the officer. Renings' grip loosened instantly. "Pastor?" Elijah stepped back, straightening his sleeve with quiet dignity. That's correct. Renings blinked, jaw tightening. You didn't identify yourself. You didn't ask. For a moment, only the wind filled the silence, brushing dried leaves across the steps. Renings shifted uncomfortably, torn between defensiveness and embarrassment. I was informed. The officer said stiffly that a suspicious individual entered the building. Elijah raised an eyebrow. Suspicious because? Renings opened his mouth, then closed it again. Harris stepped between them. Officer Renings, Pastor Ward was invited by the board. His installation service is next month. Renings stared at Elijah as if recalibrating everything. I see. Elijah nodded once. I hope you do. Several congregants had now gathered behind the doors, whispering among themselves. Elijah saw pity in some eyes, avoidance in others. The weight of it settled heavily in his chest. Pastor Ward, Harris said gently, we were just preparing the fellowship hall. You're welcome to join us. Elijah hesitated. His arm still tingled where the officer's hand had been. Thank you, he said softly, but I think I'll take a moment. Harris nodded and returned inside. Renings lingered awkwardly, clearing his throat. If you'd like to file a complaint, the officer muttered, you can contact the station. Elijah met his gaze. I don't need to file anything for me to remember what happened here today. Renings shifted, discomfort twisting his features. I was doing my job. Then perhaps, Elijah said calmly, your job needs redefining. The officer said nothing. He turned and walked away, boots heavy on the pavement. Elijah remained on the church steps, letting the cold air wash over him. Humiliation pulsed beneath his skin, but so did something else, resolve. He looked back at the sanctuary doors, wondering how many inside would speak up and how many would pretend nothing happened. He picked up his fallen Bible, brushed off the dust, and whispered to himself, this house still belongs to God. But as he stepped toward the doors, he wasn't entirely sure the house still wanted him. The sanctuary's soft murmur faded behind Elijah as he stepped into the empty corridor. His footsteps echoed against the polished floor, steady but hollow. He pressed his palm briefly to the wall, grounding himself before pushing open the side door and leaving Grace Haven through the back exit. The sunlight outside felt warmer than the tight air inside. His phone buzzed. A message from his sister Maya. You at church? How's it going? Elijah exhaled through his nose. Long story. Heading home. He tucked the phone away and crossed the parking lot, ignoring the stares from a few lingering congregants. Their expression said everything. Regret, discomfort, pity they wouldn't speak out loud. Inside the building, those whispers grew louder. Did you see the officer escorting him out? One usher muttered to another near the supply closet. I didn't know what to do, the second replied. I thought maybe Pastor Ward had done something wrong. But he didn't look wrong, the first whispered. He just looked black. A choir member stepped out of the hallway, catching their voices. Keep your voices down. The board doesn't want this spreading. Too late, the usher replied. Everyone saw it. Their conversation was cut short when the board chairwoman, Linda Greaves, walked by. She didn't acknowledge them. Her lips were pressed into a thin line, like she was preparing to smooth the incident over before it gained traction. Greaves gathered a small group in the conference room. We need to stay ahead of this, she said. Officer Renings may have misunderstood the situation, but we don't want to embarrass the department or the church. Someone coughed. What about Pastor Ward? We'll speak with him privately, she said. Later. Meanwhile, Elijah drove through quiet streets, the steering wheel warm beneath his palms. His chest still felt tight from the confrontation. He whispered to himself, you knew this could happen. You just didn't expect it here. When he arrived home, Maya stood at the doorway with her arms crossed. She wore sweatpants, a hoodie, and an expression that could cut steel. You look like you fought a mountain, she said. Something like that. Get inside, she ordered. He followed her into the living room. The couch creaked as he sank into it, dropping his keys onto the coffee table. Talk. Maya sat opposite him. What happened? And don't say nothing. I can see it all over your face. Elijah rubbed his temples. Officer Renings kicked me out. Her mouth fell open. Kicked you out of your own church? Yes. Why? Did he? No reason. Elijah interrupted softly. None he could justify. Maya shook her head slowly, disbelief morphing into anger. So he racially profiled a pastor in a church he's supposed to protect? Elijah, that's not a misunderstanding. That's a pattern. I know, Elijah murmured, but I don't want to escalate things. Maya leaned forward. This escalated the second he touched you. Elijah's eyes flickered. I don't want to divide the congregation. They already divided themselves the moment they said nothing. Her words hit harder than she intended. She softened her voice. You deserve better than silence. Elijah leaned back, letting her words settle. He knew she was right, but confronting the truth felt heavier than he wanted to carry. Did anyone defend you? Maya asked. Deacon Harris did. But the others, he paused. They watched. Maya's jaw tightened. Of course they did. He gave a tired smile. You always did expect more from people. And you always gave them too much benefit of the doubt. Elijah sighed. Maybe. She reached out and squeezed his hand. You're the pastor. They need to see strength. But they also need to see you won't let this slide. He closed his eyes briefly. The word pastor still felt new, fragile. I don't want to be the reason this church fractures. You're not the reason, she said. Racism is. The room fell quiet. Later that evening, Elijah sat at his desk, a blank journal open in front of him. He normally wrote ideas for sermons, reflections, hopes for the congregation, but now the page fell heavier. He began writing anyway. Today, I was reminded that leadership does not shield one from prejudice. The weight of being a black pastor is not just spiritual, it is historical, generational, and today it rested on me harder than expected. He paused, then wrote, I fear the silence more than the actions of one man. His hand hovered. That truth felt raw. He wrote on, Still, I believe this community can grow. I believe in what this church could become, even if it isn't there yet. Across town, Renings sat in the patrol break room, sipping cold coffee. His partner, Officer Mills, leaned against the counter. You look rattled, Mills said. Renings grunted. The guy I escorted out this morning? Turns out he's a pastor. Mills raised an eyebrow. And dispatch said a complaint might get filed. Are they filing it? Maybe, Renings muttered. Doesn't matter. I didn't do anything wrong. Mills hesitated. You're sure about that? Renings shot him a glare. What's that supposed to mean? You didn't ask him anything. You just escorted him out. He was suspicious. Sitting in a pew holding a Bible. Renings' jaw clenched. You weren't there. No, Mills said calmly, but I've been around long enough to know when someone's digging their own grave. Renings shoved the coffee aside. I followed protocol. Mills didn't reply. Silence said enough. Back at Elijah's home, Maya poked her head into the study. You writing? Yes. Good. She paused. And Elijah, don't let them quiet your voice. He met her eyes. I won't. But deep inside, he wondered if the congregation would ever see him beyond their fear of conflict. He closed the journal, leaned back in his chair, and stared at the ceiling. The church walls were whispering. But tomorrow, he would decide whether to whisper back or speak loud enough for everyone to hear. The long wooden table in Grace Haven's conference room looked more like a courtroom bench that morning. Elijah sat at one end, fingers interlaced, Bible resting beside him. Across from him sat the church board members, 8 people, each with folded arms, tense shoulders, or eyes fixed on everything except him. A pot of untouched coffee steamed weakly in the corner. Chairwoman Linda Greaves cleared her throat. Let's begin. Elijah nodded. I appreciate you all gathering on short notice. A heavy silence followed. It was Deacon Harris who finally broke it. Pastor Ward, he said gently, what happened yesterday was wrong. I want to apologize on behalf of. We don't need to jump to apologies. Greaves interjected sharply. We need clarity. Elijah's gaze lifted. Clarity is exactly why I'm here. Greaves leaned forward. Officer Renings believed the church was compromised. He responded accordingly. He responded to the sight of a black man sitting alone. Elijah replied calmly. A few board members shifted uncomfortably. That's an accusation, Greaves said. That's a fact, Elijah responded. And every person in that hallway knew he was in the wrong, but no one stepped in until Harris arrived. Mrs. Dalton, a longtime choir director, clasped her hands tightly. We weren't sure what was happening. You saw an officer remove an unarmed man, Elijah said quietly, and you said nothing. Dalton swallowed. We didn't want to interfere with law enforcement. Interfere, Elijah repeated, voice gentle but firm, or be held accountable for choosing silence. The room stiffened. Across the table, a younger board member, Samuel Tate, leaned back with crossed arms. Pastor, with respect, you're turning this into something bigger than it needs to be. Elijah met his eyes. It became bigger the moment I was treated like a criminal in my own church. Samuel shrugged. The officer made a mistake. You weren't hurt. Why can't we just move on? Because, Elijah said slowly, moving on without acknowledging truth is the very reason this keeps happening. Greaves tapped the table. Let's keep emotions measured. Elijah is not being emotional, Harris argued. He's being honest. Samuel rolled his eyes. Look, none of us asked for this to be a racial issue. Elijah's voice dropped to a soft, cutting edge. You didn't have to ask for it. It already was. A few members looked down. Greaves exhaled through her nose. Pastor Ward, given the tension this has created, the board feels it may be best to postpone your formal introduction sermon. Elijah blinked slowly. Postpone it. Just until things settle, she said. We need stability right now. Stability, Elijah repeated, or avoidance. Greaves didn't respond. Harris looked outraged. Linda, his our pastor, you're punishing him for another man's actions. We are not punishing anyone, Greaves insisted. We're protecting the congregation. Elijah leaned forward. From what? The sight of a black pastor, or the discomfort of confronting racism inside the church walls? Dalton shook her head. It's more complicated than that. It isn't, Elijah said. It's painfully simple. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Elijah drew a slow breath. I came here intending to shepherd this congregation. But leadership doesn't mean avoiding difficult truth. It means standing in it. Greaves crossed her arms. We are not a political organization. Standing against racism isn't political, Elijah replied. It's moral. Samuel muttered under his breath. Everything's political these days. Elijah ignored him. If this church wants a pastor who stays quiet in the face of injustice, I'm not that man. Dalton's eyes softened. Pastor, we're trying. Elijah nodded. Trying requires confronting what happened, not hiding from it. A knock at the door interrupted the tension. One of the youth group members, a teenager named Jordan, peeked in. His hands were shoved in his hoodie pockets. Pastor Ward, he asked timidly. Greaves frowned. This is a closed meeting. It's okay, Elijah said. Jordan, come in. The boy stepped inside, cheeks flushed. Behind him were two other teens, Maria and Lucas, hovering anxiously. We heard what happened, Jordan said. We just wanted to say, we're sorry we didn't do anything. We didn't know what to do. Maria added, none of us felt right about it. My mom said she felt sick watching it. Lucas nodded. We want you to stay. You're the first pastor who actually listens to us. Elijah felt his chest warm despite the heaviness. Thank you, he said softly. Your voices matter. More than you know. The teens glanced nervously at the board before slipping back out. The door closed behind them. Harris looked around the table. You see? The young people understand it. Why don't we? Samuel scoffed. Kids don't understand protocol. They understand humanity, Elijah countered. Greaves rubbed her temples. Pastor Ward, what exactly do you want from us today? Elijah stood slowly, palms flat against the table. I want acknowledgement. I want the truth spoken aloud. Samuel leaned back, unimpressed. You want us to say we're racist? I want you to say you were silent, Elijah replied, and silence has consequences. No one spoke. Finally, Dalton whispered, I'm sorry. Harris nodded. I'm sorry too. Two more murmured apologies followed, but Greaves and Samuel remained stone-faced. Elijah absorbed the moment, then sat back down. I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for courage, the kind this church was built on. Greaves finally spoke. We'll revisit your sermon schedule next week. It wasn't agreement. It wasn't denial. It was avoidance wrapped in polite language. Elijah understood. The meeting adjourned. Board members filtered out quietly. Elijah gathered his Bible and headed toward the exit. Outside the fellowship hall, the youth group waited. Jordan approached first. Pastor, you okay? Elijah smiled gently. I will be. Maria said, we want your sermon. This Sunday, even if the board doesn't. Lucas added, you're the only one who talks about real things. Their earnestness steadied him. Thank you, Elijah said, voice thick with emotion. You all give me hope. They nodded, smiling before returning to their tasks. As Elijah stepped outside the church into the soft afternoon light, he realized something. The divide wasn't between him and the congregation. It was between those who wanted comfort and those who wanted truth. And he knew exactly which side he stood on. Officer Cole Renings sat in the precinct break room staring at the dull silver of the microwave door. His reflection looked tired, jaw tight, eyes restless, but he refused to admit he felt shaken. Mills's earlier comments lingered, unwelcome echoes he couldn't silence. The break room door swung open. Sergeant Donovan stepped in, clipboard in hand. Renings, Donovan said flatly, I need a word. Cole straightened. Is this about yesterday? Donovan shut the door behind him. A report came in. Not an official complaint. Yet, but dispatch flagged it. Cole scoffed. Unbelievable. I did my job. Donovan raised an eyebrow. Did you? I responded to a call. Cole insisted. Suspicious individual entering the church before hours. You know how these things go. You didn't verify identity, Donovan replied. Not even a basic question. Cole's jaw flexed. He looked. Don't finish that sentence, Donovan warned quietly. Cole swallowed. Look, Sergeant, he didn't act like clergy. Donovan stared at him for a long moment. You mean he didn't act like what you think a pastor looks like? Cole bristled. This is ridiculous. No, Donovan said carefully. This is accountability. Cole looked away, heat rising to his ears. So what now? Am I getting written up? Internal review, Donovan said. Just answer their questions honestly. Cole muttered, I was honest. Donovan didn't argue. He simply left the room, leaving Cole sitting in silence that felt heavier than any reprimand. Meanwhile, Elijah stepped into Mrs. Pearl Simmons's front yard, greeted by the sight of porch plants drooping like they were tired of the summer sun. Pearl, one of the church's oldest members, sat on her wicker chair, blanket over her lap even though the air wasn't cold. Oh, Pastor Ward, she said softly. Come sit. I've been following what happened. Elijah took the seat beside her. I didn't want to cause the church trouble. You didn't cause anything, Pearl said sharply. That officer did. Elijah smiled faintly. Some people don't see it that way. That's because comfort is easier than truth. She patted his hand. Shame on them if they expect you to swallow silence. Elijah exhaled. The board wants to postpone my sermon. She made a disapproving noise. Of course they do. Some people think avoiding conflict makes them holy. All it does is make them cowards. Elijah chuckled under his breath. Pearl, you're going to get me in trouble. I'm 9-2, she said. The Lord's the only one I'm worried about, and He's on your side. Her confidence washed over him like warm sunlight. I do worry, Elijah admitted, about leading a church that hesitates to stand with me. Pearl nodded slowly. You're not here because they're ready. You're here because they're not. Elijah blinked. That's a heavy truth. She squeezed his hand again. Good leaders don't show up when people are comfortable. They show up when people need to grow. He let her words settle deep in his chest. Pearl leaned back, eyes half closed. This town has been avoiding its shadows for decades. Someone has to turn on the light. Elijah whispered, I hope I can. You already did, she said, the moment you didn't stay quiet. Across town, Renings pulled into a vacant lot beside a convenience store, stepping out of his cruiser to breathe in the cool afternoon breeze. Mills joined him outside, leaning against the hood. You look like you're carrying a backpack full of bricks, Mills said. Cole rubbed his temples. Everyone's acting like I committed a felony. You didn't, Mills said simply, but you misjudged the situation. I misjudged him, Cole corrected bitterly. He didn't look like a pastor. And what does a pastor look like? Mills asked. Cole opened his mouth, then closed it. Mills shrugged. Bias isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just quiet assumptions that steer your choices. Cole turned away. I'm not biased. Everyone is, Mills said. Difference is whether you admit it and do better. Cole clenched his fists. He's making a big deal out of nothing. You put your hand on him, Mills reminded, inside his own church. Cole bristled. I was trying to protect the building. From a man who was hired to lead it. Cole took a slow breath. I didn't know. You didn't ask, Mills replied. That's a problem. Cole's chest tightened. So what? I'm the villain now. No, Mills said calmly. But you're wrong. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you won't make this mistake again. Cole looked down at his boots, dusty and worn. I didn't mean to humiliate him. But you did. Cole's voice cracked almost imperceptibly. He looked at me like I was everything wrong with the world. Maybe, Mills said softly, you were wrong in that moment. Not the world. Cole stared out toward the horizon, uncertain for the first time. Elijah left Pearl's house feeling steadier, her words echoing in his mind. As he walked to his car, a neighbor waved from across the street. Pastor Ward, the man called. So the news online. We're with you. Elijah smiled gratefully. Thank you. That means a lot. Don't let them push you out, the neighbor added. We need a pastor like you. Elijah nodded. I'm not going anywhere. As he slid into his car and closed the door, he whispered to himself, they may not be ready, but I am. The sun dipped low behind him, casting a long shadow across Gracehaven's steeple in the distance. The divide was widening, but so was Elijah's resolve. Sunday morning sunlight spilled through the stained glass windows of Gracehaven, scattering soft blues and reds across the sanctuary floor. The room buzzed with a tension no hymn could soften. Some congregants whispered nervously. Others sat stiff and silent. A few avoided looking toward the pulpit entirely. Elijah stood just behind the heavy wooden door leading to the sanctuary, clutching the sermon notes he'd rewritten a dozen times. His heart beat steadily, not out of fear, but out of clarity. Today wasn't about approval. It was about truth. Maya squeezed his arm. You sure about this? Yes, he said, even if the board didn't give permission. Elijah exhaled. God did. Maya smiled. Then go remind them who their pastor is. Inside, the board gathered near the front row. Chairwoman Greaves spotted Elijah emerging from the side entrance and stood abruptly. Pastor Ward, she whispered sharply, this service is not your scheduled introduction. We agreed to postpone. I didn't agree to postpone, Elijah said calmly. Samuel Tate muttered, this is irresponsible. What's irresponsible? Elijah replied softly, is silence. Greaves's lips pinched. We can discuss this after the service. No, Elijah said. We'll address it during the service. The murmurs around them grew louder. The worship leader, clearly uneasy, stepped aside as Elijah moved toward the pulpit. A few youth group members, Jordan, Maria, and Lucas, clapped quietly, their small encouragement echoing louder than the rest of the congregation's unease. Elijah placed his notes on the stand. He didn't need them. He barely glanced. He simply breathed, then began, Good morning. His voice carried through the sanctuary like a steady tide. A few people responded. Others remained silent. I know today feels heavy, Elijah continued. It feels uncomfortable, and I won't pretend otherwise. Something happened here last week that revealed something painful about us, not about one officer, but about a system, and about a silence we've grown too accustomed to. He paused, scanning the room, meeting eyes that quickly darted away. I was escorted out of this church as if I were a threat, he said. But what cut deeper was not the officer's hand on my arm. It was the silence of those who watched. Several people shifted uneasily in their seats. This is not about blame, Elijah said gently. It's about truth. A voice rose from the back. Well, here we go. Samuel muttered loudly enough for half the congregation to hear. Elijah didn't flinch. Yes, here we go, into a conversation we should have had long ago. He stepped down from the pulpit, walking slowly across the aisle. There's a scripture, he said, that calls us to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves. But how can we do that if we cannot even speak for each other? Dalton looked down at her lap, tears forming. Elijah continued, Some of you believe that staying neutral keeps the peace. But neutrality didn't protect me on these steps. And neutrality won't protect anyone else hurt by the same assumptions. At the back of the sanctuary, the doors opened. Officer Cole Renings entered. He stood in uniform, arms crossed, expression guarded. The sanctuary tension snapped tight instantly. A ripple of whispers rushed through the room. Elijah did not break stride. He walked calmly back to the pulpit and placed both hands on its wooden edge. Welcome, Officer Renings, he said. Cole stiffened but gave a curt nod. Elijah faced the congregation again. I invited him. Gasps spread. Grieve jumped up. Pastor Ward, this is not appropriate. It is, Elijah said quietly, because healing does not happen behind closed doors, and truth cannot exist in the dark. Cole cleared his throat from the back. I didn't agree to speak. You don't have to, Elijah replied. Your presence speaks. Cole looked away, uncomfortable. Elijah continued the sermon, voice steady but charged. We cannot grow if we bury our wounds. We cannot heal if we refuse to look at the harm we cause or allow. This sanctuary must be a house of truth, not avoidance. A woman in the second row lifted a trembling hand. Pastor, we didn't know what to do. Some of us froze. Elijah nodded. I understand that. Fear is real, but silence still hurts. Her eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. Others murmured softly, whispering the same, but several remained unmoved. Samuel stood abruptly. This is turning into a spectacle. No, Elijah said softly. This is turning into accountability. Samuel scoffed. You're dividing this church. Elijah met his gaze. Truth doesn't divide the church. It reveals who chooses comfort over growth. Maya spoke up from her seat. Say it, Elijah. He did. This house belongs to God, not to fear, not to prejudice, not to silence. A few clapped, then more. Then the youth group stood, applauding boldly. The elders remained still. Greaves closed her eyes, pained by the shift in power. Elijah raised one final message. I will pastor this church. I will love this church. But I will not lie to this church. We must become better than what happened. And that starts now. He stepped back, allowing the sanctuary to breathe. Jordan's voice broke through the quiet. Pastor, do you want us to start the closing hymn? Elijah smiled gently. Yes, please. The youth moved to the altar, guitars and soft voices filling the sanctuary with a calm melody. As people stood slowly, Elijah noticed Renings still by the door. Their eyes met briefly. For the first time, Cole looked uncertain, almost human. When the hymn ended, half the room gave Elijah a standing ovation. The other half sat still, wrestling with truth they did not want to face. It didn't matter. Elijah had spoken. The sanctuary had heard. And the reckoning had begun. By Monday morning, Grace Haven was no longer just a church. It was a headline. Local pastor removed by officer before service. Community questions racial profiling inside church walls. Grace Haven faces internal conflict after viral story. Maya stood in Elijah's kitchen, scrolling through her phone, shaking her head. It's everywhere, she muttered. Everyone's reposting it. Elijah poured himself coffee, the mug trembling slightly in his hand. I didn't want it to be everywhere. You told the truth, Maya said. People listened. That's not your fault. I didn't even speak to any reporter yet. You didn't have to. Someone filmed it. Elijah closed his eyes. The congregant silence echoed all over again, but this time the world was watching. Across town, Officer Renning stormed into the precinct, slamming the morning newspaper onto his sergeant's desk. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "They are blowing everything out of proportion." Sergeant Donovan sighed deeply. "Sit down, Cole." Cole remained standing. "I'm being painted as some kind of monster." "Your actions are under review," Donovan said calmly. "No one called you a monster." Cole jabbed the headline. "This makes me look incompetent." "You grabbed a man without cause inside his own church," Donovan replied. "There's nothing competent about that." Cole's mouth tightened. "I was doing my job." "You were doing your assumptions," Donovan corrected. "And now we have a problem." Cole paced the small office. "People are attacking me online. My wife got messages. My daughter saw comments." "I'm sorry," Donovan said, "but this is a situation." Cole turned, anger flashing. "Because of him." "Because of your actions," Donovan repeated firmly. "Cole, you need to stop blaming Pastor Ward." Cole's voice rose. "He's the one who made this public." "He didn't," Donovan said. "A witness did." Cole fell silent. Donovan continued. "Internal affairs is involved. Suspension is on the table." Cole stared at him, stunned. "You're suspending me over this." "No decision yet," Donovan said, "but you need to prepare." Cole looked away, jaw trembling. "I didn't think it would go this far." "It always goes far," Donovan said softly, "when truth finally finds a microphone." Meanwhile, Elijah sat across from local reporter Anna Morales at a small community cafe. He'd agreed to speak, carefully, honestly, without naming Cole. Anna flipped open her notebook. "Pastor Ward, thank you for meeting with me. I know this isn't easy." "It's not," Elijah admitted, "but silence isn't an option anymore." Anna nodded. "I want to understand what happened from your perspective, not for sensationalism, for clarity." Elijah breathed in slowly. "The officer believed I was a threat. He saw a black man alone in a church and assumed something criminal. That assumption isn't new. It isn't rare. It's the reason I'm speaking now." Anna scribbled notes. "Do you consider this an act of racism?" Elijah chose his words with care. "I consider it a symptom of something our country hasn't healed from. I'm not attacking Officer Renings as a human being. I'm addressing the system that shaped his reaction." Anna paused. "What do you hope comes from this?" Elijah answered quietly, "Accountability, reflection, change, and maybe courage from those who stayed silent." Anna looked up, eyes soft. "Thank you. That's all I need." As she left, Elijah exhaled, shoulders heavy. He knew his words would echo far beyond this cafe. Back at his home, Elijah sat alone in his study, replaying the sermon from yesterday. The faces, the reactions, the tension, the courage, the coldness. He whispered, "God, guide me." But the answer came in the form of a memory, a flash of being 16, shoved against a store wall by an officer who thought he fit the description. A memory he had buried deep but now resurfaced with relentless clarity. His chest tightened. He pressed a hand to his sternum. The old fear, the one he never admitted he still carried, returned like a shadow stretching across the years. A soft knock sounded at the door. "Elijah." Maya's voice. "You okay in there?" He cleared his throat. "Yeah. Dinner's ready. I'll be down in a minute." But he didn't move. Not yet. Not until he steadied himself. That evening, as the sky darkened to deep navy, Elijah took out the trash. The air was crisp, a hint of rain brewing somewhere distant. He stopped short. A patrol car crawled slowly down his street. Cole Renings was behind the wheel. The cruiser didn't stop, just rolled past, headlights gliding across Elijah's driveway like searching eyes. Elijah stood still, watching. Cole didn't look at him, but his grip on the steering wheel was white-knuckled, face pale under the glow of the dashboard. Maya rushed outside. "Elijah? Who?" He pointed. "Renings." Her expression hardened. "Why is he driving by our house?" "I don't know," Elijah said quietly. The cruiser turned the corner and disappeared. Maya folded her arms. "That man is unstable." "Is under pressure," Elijah murmured. "That makes it worse," she replied. Elijah didn't disagree. Later, as thunder grumbled in the distance, Maya sat beside him on the couch. The reporter called. "The interview airs tomorrow." He nodded slowly. "I expected that." "You ready?" "No," he admitted, "but I'm willing." Maya touched his shoulder. "There's a difference." He nodded again. "Willingness is courage dressed in uncertainty." She smiled softly. "Then you're the bravest man I know." Elijah leaned back, staring at the ceiling as the storm rolled closer. Somewhere across town, Officer Cole Renning sat alone in his dark living room. TV turned off, phone buzzing with notifications he refused to check. His knee bounced anxiously. "They are all against me," he muttered, "because of him." But deep down, beneath the anger, beneath the defensiveness, something else was stirring. Fear. Fear of consequences. Fear of truth. Fear of facing himself. The next morning, Elijah stood in front of the mirror adjusting his collar. His interview would air at noon. The congregation, the community, and even the police department would see it. Maya poked her head in. "Nervous?" "Yes." "Good," she said. "It means you care." Elijah picked up his Bible, the same one he dropped on the church floor that day. He whispered, "Let's see this through." Outside, the sky had cleared, a moment of calm before the next storm. By noon the next day, every TV in the cafe, every tablet in the break room, and every phone in Grace Haven's parking lot flickered with the same broadcast. Elijah Ward's interview. Anna Morales appeared on screen first, calm and composed. Today, Pastor Elijah Ward shares his perspective on the incident at Grace Haven Church, an incident now sparking local and statewide conversation. Then Elijah appeared, sitting straight-backed, hands folded gently, expression steady, but solemn. Maya stood behind the couch at home, arms crossed tightly, watching the screen with a mix of pride and fear. Anna's recorded question played. "Pastor, what do you believe happened that morning?" Elijah's voice came through the speakers. "I believe Officer Renings acted on assumptions rooted in a system he didn't create, but participates in. My hope is not to condemn him as a person, but to reveal how quickly bias leads to harm, especially when authority is involved." Maya exhaled shakily. "Perfect. You said exactly what needed saying." Elijah didn't answer. His eyes stayed fixed on his own face, hearing his words with the world. At the precinct, Cole Renings watched the same footage on his locker room TV. The sound echoed off cold metal. When the interviewer asked, "Do you forgive him?" Elijah's recorded response floated through the room. "I forgive him. But forgiveness doesn't remove accountability. It invites change." Cole's jaw clenched. Forgive him? He didn't understand whether to feel relieved or insulted. Officer Mills stepped in behind him. "You watching it?" Cole didn't look away. "He talks like I'm the villain in a Sunday drama." "He didn't call you a villain," Mills said. "He called what you did harmful." Cole turned. "Same thing." "No," Mills replied. "It's not." Cole looked back at the TV. "Everyone's going to think I'm racist." "What do you think you are?" Mills asked quietly. Cole froze. Mills sighed. "Internal Affairs wants you in the conference room at 3. Cole's stomach sank. "Already?" "It's moving fast now," Mills said. "Press attention speeds everything up." Cole rubbed his jaw. "Great. Just great." Back at Grace Haven, small groups gathered after broadcast. Some congregants whispered, "He was so composed, so gracious." Others muttered, "He shouldn't be dragging the church into this." A few said nothing, eyes low, avoiding eye contact. But the youth group, Jordan, Maria, Lucas, walked straight up to Elijah when he arrived. Jordan beamed. "Pastor, you were incredible." Maria added, "My mom cried." Lucas finished, "You spoke for all of us." Elijah smiled warmly. Thank you. That means more than you know. Chairwoman Grieve approached next, posture stiff, lips pursed. Pastor Ward, she said, your interview was very public. Yes, Elijah replied, intentionally. She frowned. This puts pressure on the church. The truth always does, Elijah said. Samuel Tate joined her, shaking his head. You should have warned us. Elijah met his gaze calmly. I didn't know you were warning. I owed the community honesty. Samuel muttered something under his breath and walked away. Greaves followed, her expression conflicted, half irritation, half something almost like respect she didn't want to acknowledge. That afternoon, Elijah received a call from an unfamiliar number. He answered. This is Pastor Ward. A trembling voice spoke on the other end. Pastor, thank you. Who am I speaking to? This is Aisha Coleman. I'm a minister at Holy Zion. I saw the interview. You said what so many of us haven't felt safe to say. Elijah sat straighter. Thank you. Truly. You're not alone, she added. A lot of us are watching closely and praying for you. Elijah's eyes warmed. Your support means more than you know. After the call, he set the phone down slowly, absorbing the weight of communal solidarity he had never expected. Across town, Cole sat in the internal affairs conference room. A panel of 3 officers faced him with measured expressions. Officer Renings, the lead investigator, began. We reviewed preliminary footage, dispatch logs, and witness statements. Cole swallowed hard. Yes, so. We have concerns, the investigator said. Significant ones. Cole gripped the edge of his chair. I made a split-second decision. The church was empty. The call sounded urgent. You escalated without cause, the investigator interrupted. You failed to identify the individual. You applied physical contact where none was warranted. Cole's breath grew shallow. His world, authority, certainty, confidence, shook under the weight of each statement. One panel member asked, Do you acknowledge you acted prematurely? Cole hesitated. Silence stretched. Finally, he muttered, I didn't think he belonged there. The investigator's pen stopped moving. That, he said quietly, is a problem. Cole looked down, unable to respond. As the sun set, Elijah walked into the sanctuary. The room was empty, quiet, holy, warm with late afternoon light. He sat in the front pew and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Maya entered behind him, stepped soft. It aired beautifully, she whispered. Elijah nodded slowly. I hope I did right. Maya sat beside him. You told the truth. That's right enough. He inhaled deeply. The altar flickered with light from a single stained glass window. Do you think the congregation will change? He asked. Maya hesitated. Some will, some won't, but they'll never be the same. Elijah closed his eyes. I want healing. You'll get it, Maya said, but healing means breaking first. He swallowed, feeling the weight of her words. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolled, slow, steady, echoing like a call to courage. The truth was now public. The community was stirred. And Officer Renings' world was unraveling. The final reckoning was near. Internal affairs moved quickly. By Friday morning, the precinct released a brief public statement. Officer Cole Renings has been placed on administrative suspension pending further investigation. Short, unsparing, unavoidable. Cole stood in his kitchen staring at the announcement on his phone. His daughter's cereal sat untouched across the table. His wife hovered behind him, hands clasped tightly. So, suspension, she whispered. Cole's voice cracked. It's not final. But it's public, she said. Everyone will know. Cole's throat tightened. I never meant for it to. You should have asked him his name, she said, not angrily, but exhausted. You should have asked anything. Cole's shoulders sagged. I know. For the first time, he truly did. Grace Haven filled slowly that same evening for the scheduled reconciliation service. The board had reluctantly approved Elijah's proposal after the interview aired. They couldn't justify refusing it now. The sanctuary glowed under gentle lighting, the stained glass windows catching the last strands of sunset. Elijah stood near the pulpit, adjusting his tie. He felt calm, though the weight of the week pressed heavy across his chest. Maya joined him, carrying a stack of printed prayers. "You ready?" she asked softly. "No," he admitted, "but willing." She smiled, still brave. The youth group members filed in first, sitting together in their usual cluster near the front. Jordan gave Elijah a thumbs up. Maria waved. Lucas nodded quietly. Then the adults came, some solemn, some hesitant, some clearly uncomfortable. A handful of people avoided Elijah's gaze altogether. Last to enter were Officers Mills and, unexpectedly, Cole Renings. A hush fell over the sanctuary. Cole removed his hat, holding it against his chest. He looked smaller than Elijah remembered, tired, unsteady, stripped of the armor he usually carried. Mills whispered something to Cole before they took a seat in the back. Maya leaned toward Elijah. "You didn't know he'd come." "No," Elijah whispered. "You want me to ask him to leave?" "No," Elijah said. "Tonight is about truth, and truth requires courage from everyone." When the room settled, Elijah stepped to the pulpit. His voice carried softly, like a gentle tide washing over stone. "Thank you for coming. Tonight is not a sermon. Tonight is a chance to speak honestly, to acknowledge harm, to acknowledge silence, and to acknowledge the courage needed to heal." People shifted, listening. The purpose of reconciliation isn't to erase what happened. It's to confront it with honesty. He paused, scanning the room. "Some of you apologize privately, some publicly, and some of you still struggle with this conversation. I want you to know, struggle is not failure. Silence is." A few people lowered their eyes. "Tonight, we begin healing," Elijah continued, "not by pretending we're united, but by telling the truth about where we stand." Dalton, elderly, trembling, raised a hand. Elijah nodded. She stood. "Pastor, I should have spoken that day. I didn't, and I am sorry." Her voice cracked, sincerity ringing clear. Elijah offered a gentle smile. "Thank you." Another congregant, Mr. Jacobs, murmured. I froze. "I've never seen anything like that in church before. I didn't know how to react." "You react by standing with the vulnerable," Elijah said softly, "even when it's uncomfortable." Samuel Tate stood abruptly, arms crossed. "I still think this entire thing has been blown out of proportion." Greaves whispered, "Samuel—" "No," he said louder. "We're turning worship into a spectacle." Elijah didn't raise his voice. The spectacle was when a man was dragged out of this sanctuary without cause. Tonight, we're simply acknowledging it. A few people nodded. Samuel glared, but sat down. Then something unexpected happened. From the back row, Cole Renning stood. Every neck turned. Cole swallowed hard. "Pastor Ward, may I speak?" Elijah met his eyes. "Yes." Cole walked down the aisle slowly, stopping halfway, handshaking just enough to be visible. "I came tonight because I needed to see this for myself." He swallowed. "What I did was wrong." The sanctuary fell into a stunned silence. Cole continued, voice unsteady. "I acted on a bias I didn't even know I carried. I didn't ask questions. I didn't give you respect. And I humiliated you in a place that means something to you." His voice tightened. "I'm sorry." Maya stiffened beside Elijah, unsure whether to trust the words. Elijah spoke carefully. "Thank you for acknowledging the truth." Cole nodded once. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to say the words out loud." "You already have my forgiveness," Elijah said gently. "Tonight is about more than us." Cole blinked rapidly, breath catching in his throat. The youth group led a soft hymn next, the melody rising like warm light through the sanctuary. People joined slowly, hesitant at first, then stronger, weaving harmony through the room. Elijah closed his eyes. This moment, the voices, the vulnerability, the shared discomfort, felt like sunlight cracking through old stained glass. When the hymn ended, Elijah stepped forward again. "Reconciliation is a journey," he said. "Tonight is not the end, but it is a beginning." Greaves stood, voice softer than usual. Pastor Ward, I hope you'll continue leading us. Elijah looked around the sanctuary, at the youth, the elders, the hesitant, the hopeful, even at Cole, and felt the weight of his role settle into something steadier. Yes, he said simply, I will. Later, after everyone filtered out, Elijah stood alone at the pulpit. The sanctuary was quiet again, bathed in soft golden lamplight. Maya entered, arms folded, watching her brother with a proud, gentle smile. You did it, she said. No, Elijah whispered. We did. Together. He looked up at the stained glass cross, watching as a final beam of early night moonlight glowed through it. The same pulpit he once feared he'd never stand behind again now felt like home. Hurt lingered. Healing would take time. The scars wouldn't vanish. But light was filling the house again. And Elijah Ward was still standing, still leading, still believing, still becoming.